Carrie Adams, and you're listening to Carrie's Connoisseurs, coming to you from Solid Gold Podcasts. Here we talk to the movers and shakers, the drinkers, the dreamers, and all the people who make it happen in the liquor and luxury industries from around the world. Well, today I am joined by Jessica Sauerwein in my podcast studio. She is a winemaker, a mom, a friend, all of those in one, and she's on an interview with me today. Jess, hi, thank you for joining me.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you so much. And hi to everyone of you. It's a wonderful privilege to be on the show.
Well, so nice to have you. And tomorrow we're going to taste lots and lots of glasses of wine from various vintages and things, which I'm very excited about. We can talk about all of those. But I wanted to catch up with you because I love your story. It's quiet, it's under the radar, it's classy, you produce beautiful wine. Not many people know about them, unfortunately, but we'll change that. We'll send this to everybody on the planet so that they know who Jessica Sauerwein is. And I keep saying Sauerwein, but I'm told that it's got to be Sauerwein, hey?
Yeah, well, it is originally Austrian. Apparently, there's some history in my family. My ancestor was making some either very sour or very dry wine, which is, Sauerwein in German, for the Duke of Austria. And that's how he gained his title or his name. Then there was a movement of those people to Germany. So my father came from Germany, my mom's South African, and I was born in Riyadh of all places,
Oh
in
my
Saudi
goodness.
Arabia,
So
where there was no alcohol.
what was your no, and probably still isn't. What was your family surname before he became a winemaker?
I have no idea. I mean, this was back in the 17th century, so I have no clue.
It's
But my
quite
grandfather was actually also a cellar master. He used to be a real négociant in Germany, buying grapes and
okay.
wine, and then put his own label on and sell them on, which is not what I do, but something also with wine, which is quite cool.
So the DNA runs thick and deep and long and far. And the apples or the grapes don't fall far from the vine, do they? So, Jessica, you studied viticulture and enology at Stelli's and
That's it.
worked where? Where did you work first off?
I started just after school, actually, in Tulbach at a little place called Montpellier. And I was quickly given an assistant winemaker's business card, which made me feel very proud, of course, at the age of 18 with no experience in wine. And a bit nervous, of course. But it was fantastic.
Actually, it's a lovely little farm, Montpellier.
And, what was quite exciting about it was that I had to spend, late nights climbing up rickety ladders with yeast buckets filled to the brim, all by myself. And I think that adventure and that excitement of galloping on horseback through the vineyards really gave me the understanding of what this industry was going to be all about. And I wanted to make that adventure my life. So I then proceeded to doing a gap year overseas and traveling to France, working in Châteauneuf-du-Pape and Baume de Venise. And then I traveled a little bit as well. And I came back to start my studies at Stanford University, which was quite difficult for me because I didn't know much science at school. So I had to learn the language of science. I was more of a language and art person at the time. But it was incredible. I mean, once I had the ability to understand science, it just opened up a world of information and fascination with nature. And to be able to make something from nature that people can enjoy, like this product that we work with, was such a treat. So I pursued it for 4 years, and then I started working already during my studies at Buschard Finlayson, which was a great privilege, working under Peter Finlayson, who, as we know, is sort of the father of Pinot Noir in South Africa.
One of the masters,
and of course, that was sort of where my interest for Pinot came from as well.
So did you know when you were little that you wanted to be a winemaker, or did that just happen organically when you started working at Montpellier? How did it happen?
So I think my parents, they were always bitten by the wine bug. My mom used to haul suitcases of wine back to Germany from South Africa when she visited her family here. And, she would always open a bottle of wine ceremoniously with my dad. And then my sister was quite a lot older, so she was eventually the one bringing wonderful bottles of wine home for Sunday lunches. And I was quite young, but I was allowed to already have a little antique wine glass with every Sunday meal. and it just
And
really caught my attention.
I suppose that sparked the interest and love for Riesling, which you do so well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love the grape, and we've always been introduced to it because of our German heritage, of course. And then in
Mm.
2016, I traveled with Roland to Germany, and we visited 5 of the 11 winemaking regions there. And the Mosel was just for me such a treat.
It's
So
so beautiful,
beautiful and
isn't it?
such incredible wines.
Mm.
The wines tasted like sunshine, in the glass, and that in cold gray Germany. Was
I
quite a treat for
know
me. So no, absolutely
it's amazing, those Rieslings, and some of them the most expensive white wines in the world that people don't really ever get the privilege of tasting because they're just so sought after and so difficult to get hold of. But they are, if you can make a beautiful Riesling, you're certainly selling Rolls Royces because that's
yeah.
what Riesling is. If you get
And
it
you
right, it's the Rolls Royce. Mm.
and when you walk in those vineyards in Germany, that are built at such an angle and they're so steep, you really marvel at human ingenuity because you can hardly even walk in those vineyards, let alone pick grapes and carry heavy crates. So it's always just
I
fascinating
know,
to see how
and
these vineyards can produce.
never mind pick and walk. What about planting them and actually
Exactly.
tending those vineyards? You can't put equipment or implements or anything there, can you? It's just crazy. And sort of
Everything's done
dotted
by
around
hand.
in amongst
Exactly.
everything by hand, which I think is why they're so beautiful, to be honest. And then, of course,
Agreed.
the odd gorgeous castle sort of lobbed in between all of those. It is one of the most magnificent wine lands in the world, I think. So we know where the love of Riesling comes from, and then, of course, you mentioned that you were sort of working under my darling Pete Finlayson, who is just one of my Pinot Noir princes. I mean, he really has made such big inroads and such huge contributions to Pinot Noir in South Africa. Lucky you. How did you get that job?
Absolutely. I was just lucky one day. My mom said, "You must go visit this place. Sean Connery is working there, and you must go and meet
He
this man.
does
He's
look.
fascinating."
Yes.
And so I thought, okay, well, let me take a trip, and I took a trip with my girlfriend. At the time, she was doing BSc as well, and I managed to get a holiday job for just a couple of weeks during my third year in the vineyard. And at the time, Teresa de Villiers was the winemaker there, so it really spoke to me that there was also a woman in wine, and it was quite inspiring because a lot of the male fraternity at the time was not very encouraging about joining the wine industry, which can be such a physically taxing
Speak
job
to
at
me. I
times.
mean, I think that I was one of the first females in the South African wine industry. Not the only,
That's right.
but
Yeah.
one of the first. And I have to say, everybody's quite sort of they have quite strange memories of that. I have fabulous memories of my wine industry. The boys were so accommodating and they were so all embracing and they helped and they've been amazing. But it really was a male dominated industry in South Africa. Of that there is absolutely no doubt. But they were nice. They were really nice. They were at that time there weren't many lady winemakers. I think Norma Ratcliffe was probably the only female winemaker when I came back from England.
Amazing. Yeah.
And thankfully, there are lots more of you now, but it was just never considered a female occupation. So it's really nice to see lots and lots of you girls hiding around, wandering around in cellars and vineyards and things. It's fabulous. It's just what it should be. So you left
Yeah.
there, and well, what happened? Did you meet that ghastly rascal Roland Pierce and marry him and decide to buy a farm, or what happened?
So that
What
was actually,
happened?
yeah, I met him at Bushard Finlayson actually. One day he was taking around an important wine critic, Neil Martin, and I wasn't sure who was who.
Mm.
And I thought the one was very handsome, and I hoped that that was not the one from the UK.
Yeah, you should have married
And
Neil
that happened
Martin.
to
You would
be
have been much wealthier.
nonsense. No,
Don't tell him
we've
we
had
said
an
that, though.
amazing journey, I must say. It's been incredible to share such passion with with my partner about wine and be able to fulfill our dream, which is to live on a farm and to be able to derive a lot of our produce from our own property and to live a little bit more sustainably and to plant a vineyard. I mean, what an incredible opportunity, and to have a little boutique
I know
cellar. Um,
it all just sort of seemed to fit. I must admit, at some stage, I had almost given up on Roland. I thought that he was going to be wayward for the rest of his life. And then along came Jessica, and he turned into a really sensible, suitable sort of chap. I don't really know what you did to him, but there it is. And now you're happily on Waterfall Farm. It wasn't a wine farm when you bought it, was it?
no, it was actually just a beautiful property that had been looked after wonderfully by the previous owner. He planted a whole lot of trees and farmed a small patch of organic vegetables. And he had in mind to possibly play around and make some wine. And therefore, he built this massive barn, which he didn't really use for much. But I think he realized that it was going to take too much energy to make his own wine. So he just had this gorgeous barn there, and it was like a plug and fit for us. It was actually friends of
Mm.
friends who owned this property, and we decided, well, there we go. The barn is going to be the cellar, and all we needed to do is uh, close up some of the windows on the sun-facing side and put in a ceiling and put in a strip drain in the floor, and then equip it with all the cellar equipment. And that all came together really nicely. So now we've got our cellar on
A few
site, which
million
is
rand later, you
useful.
make it sound so easy. But a few million bucks later, and about
Yeah,
two
you've got to be
years worth of
creative.
hard graft. Yes.
Yeah. And
So
now the
now
first
have
vineyard
you?
poles are going in.
That's what I was about to ask you. Have you started planting?
So we planned to plant, in the first year, second year we arrived here, we're like, okay, next year we'll plant. And then we were hit by three very, very wet, rainy years where we didn't have access anymore to the site that we'd selected. We put in a cutoff drain, but that didn't really help much. It didn't maybe help that we also were taking down about a hectare of lugam trees to help the
Oh,
landscape
yeah.
recover a bit. But of course, that's led to more influx of water. So now we've just basically swung our sites onto the best soils of the farm, which are on less of a slope as well on the other side of the forest. And we're going to be planting a hectare of Pinot this year in September. Two different clones, and on a trellis system, which is going to be farmed regeneratively with the use of animals and cover crops, etc. And it's all going to be
I
organic,
can't
which
wait
is,
to
the
speak to
future
you.
in our mind. Yeah,
I know. I can't wait to speak to you tomorrow when I see you actually in real life, because
me
I've
too.
got
Yes.
something that you need to know about. You absolutely need to
Okay,
know about. It's a
awesome.
project that I'm busy working on, which is a soil regenerative sort of project that I'm doing, and
Amazing.
the whole industry has to have it. It's brilliant. It's going to change the face of our wine industry. Not only wine, everything.
That's very
It's an
exciting.
amazing organic thing. So remind me to speak to you about that tomorrow. So currently
Super.
you're planting your first Pinot vineyard on your place, which is just for everybody's edification. It's just outside Stanford, is it?
That's right. Yeah, it's just about 8 k's on the gravel road that follows the Stanford mountain range along towards Caledon. So it's called the Kleiner Viersberg Mountain. And Roland happens to be chairman of the conservancy, in fact. It's a really pristine nature that we
Yes,
have,
of
have
course
out
he
here.
is.
No wonder that, Grootbos Nature Reserve identified this area years ago and has, as a result, made the most incredible place to visit. And we've also just got the
Yes.
shark diving, down the road. So it's an incredible place. And the Stanford is developing into a really picturesque little village with lots of attractions. We also have lots of
Mm,
investment in farms nearby, which is exciting. Even a couple from
mm.
Pretoria has bought a property just a few farms up the road from us and has planted a hectare of grapes as well. So
Oh,
really nice
really?
to see.
So
Yeah.
what are the soils? What's the major sort of soil type in and around
Okay,
your
so
farm?
it's more, as you move further away from Hermanus or from the Himalaya, you get more marginal soils, right? But with pockets of
Yes.
a little bit of Bockerfeld shale, which always offers a little bit more clay component, which is of course mineral
Mm,
rich and therefore can
mm,
lend itself to planting some successful red wines. Because for red wines, you do need a little bit more structure in the soil to be able to
mm,
produce, a richer style of red. If you're looking for a light style, then the sandier soils are all right, but you do need to have irrigation, and that's of course not always
mm.
possible, depending on
Possible.
your water
Yeah.
on the farm. So we're just very very fortunate that we found a property which we could live on, farm on, and have a cellar on. It's not always a given that you have that, and then to have enough
Yes.
water to
Yeah.
sustain whatever you want to grow. But
Mm.
yeah, the soils are a mix. I mean, we are in the valley. So, higher up we got Table Mountain sandstone, and then through our property runs a fault line, which then transitions to Bockerfeld shale. So
Okay.
yeah, more sort of sandier soils, and then some clay-rich soil. So we've been fortunate. We have quite an interesting pocket of soil on the other side of the farm, which is yellow and red clays. So some high to medium potential, but there are also lots of sandier patches, which we probably won't tackle until we absolutely need to.
Well, I've got the muti. I've got just the muti for you that you're going to put into that soil, and you'll see in a
Brilliant.
year or two you'll be swimming. Jess, tell me, so the grapes that you're getting for your current wines, because you've got 4 wines that I know of, 2 Rieslings and 2 Pinot Noirs, is that correct?
It's just one Riesling and 2 Pinots. Yeah. So I do harvest grapes from different vineyards for the Riesling, but it's just the Chi Riesling that I
Oh,
produce,
is it just the one?
which
I thought it
is
was, I know that you had 2 sites, and I thought you
yeah, that's
bottled
right,
them
exactly.
independently of one another.
No, no, they go into the same cuvee. So the
Okay.
Riesling is really just an expression of the top cool climate sites of Riesling in the Western Cape, but I mean it's all South Coast labeled. So the origin is Elgin and Heelmanade, or Elgin
And
and
tell me
Upper
about that
Heelmanade Valley.
Riesling.
Okay, so the
That
Chi
Riesling,
Riesling.
what clones?
So the
Sorry,
Chi
you
Riesling
carry on.
is no problem. It's made in a floral fruity style, and it's also slightly off dry. So I stop the fermentation when there's just a touch of residual sugar left, something like 10 grams of sugar. And the clones are the sort of the traditional clones 110. I don't know if that says anything to and
Yeah, it does. Not to
239.
most of the community, but that sounds
Yeah,
gorgeous. And I love that
yeah,
they're a little bit sweeter than those terribly dry ones. We used to have, I think, what we called Cape Riesling here,
that's
which
right.
was
Yeah, that wasn't the real
you
Riesling, but
needed
yeah, yeah.
you needed to get. It's given Riesling a very bad reputation in South Africa, and you needed to get somebody else to take the first sip for you. It was terrible. But but so you make one, and it's called Chi. Who's Chi?
Yeah, so the Chi Riesling is made from the Weißer Riesling grape, which is the traditional German Riesling grape.
Mm.
And Chi is basically stands for life force and energy. It also stands for Chiota, which is this ancient African rain god. And in 2018, when I made my first vintage of the Riesling, all the fruit came from Elgin at the time. And Elgin was actually there to save the Western Cape from the drought, because we had actually just bought a house near Stellenbosch, and it was unbelievable how we just planted 24 fruit trees, and now we had to use only buckets to water because there was such bad drought.
Oh
And it
my
was actually
word! Yeah.
Elgin, because Elgin has always got a lot of water, even in a drought situation.
Mm.
It was able to open the gates and save the Western Cape from having to queue for water. So I thought it would make sense to talk about Elgin and how it's always overcast and there's always a bit of rain. It just indicates what a different climate it has, even compared to Hermanus and Stanford. It's a really cool
Yes.
climate, and that's perfect for the ripening of Riesling, because Riesling, traditionally is actually quite a resistant variety to rot. For example, the canopy, it withstands rot quite well. As winemaker, you always worry
Mm.
about rot because, it can decrease the quality of your grapes.
Yes.
But the reason for that is that Riesling actually has to hang the longest. It's the grape that I take in the
Yeah.
last. So when the guys in the Swartland are
Mm.
done harvesting for 2 months already, they've finished, they've forgotten about harvest. I'm just starting with a Riesling. It needs to be, the grapes need to
Yes.
be really yellow. They need to look like they've been kissed by the sun. Um, but we do, we're quite
100%. And it's so gorgeous.
cons-
I'm waiting for you to have some botrytis in your Riesling vineyard, and I want you to make me a sticky Riesling, please.
Oh, I would love that one day. Absolutely. I might just have to plant
Can
my
you
own vineyards for
imagine
that,
how
though.
gorgeous?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
So we've got the Riesling, which honestly is completely delicious. Anybody who's not familiar with Riesling, with real Riesling, because we had, as I say, a bit of a false start in South Africa. Everybody thought they were drinking Riesling, and they weren't. They were drinking something else.
And it
But
was really sweet. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, it was just, I think it was chaptalized as well. Quite a lot of it was chaptalized. It was just not really to be recommended. So forget that, guys. Forget all about your history in your head of South African Riesling and go and buy yourself some chi. You won't be sorry. Then we move on to Nom, which we love.
Yes.
We love Nom.
Ma-
Who's Nom? Nom sounds like a yoga. What do you call those things when a mantra, like a
Well,
yogi
actually,
mantra?
yeah. So I have two wines, just to make it a little confusing. I've named them very similarly. The one is
And
called Nom,
Nom and Om.
and the other one is called Om. And Om is really the yogi word, or at least the word that starts to initiate really positive vibration when you say it. Om. It
Yes.
just helps your diaphragm vibrate, and in doing that, it relaxes your nervous system. So it's really a great practice. You can even do it while you're drinking the wine.
I was going to say it's much
Makes
easier
you
to
even
just drink
happier.
a bottle of wine and you've completely relaxed without even saying a word.
So the Pinot comes from the Himalaya Ridge appellation, but you asked about the Nom. The Nom Pinot comes from the Elandskloof, and Nom stands for Nom Kubulwane, which is an ancient Zulu goddess that the ladies prayed to by climbing to the higher lying hillsides to feel closer to the goddess. And she was responsible for beer brewing, fertility, agriculture, etc. And I just thought it would be great to talk a bit about African folklore. That was my first wine that I started with in 2015. And the site where
Mm.
it comes from is just so magical. It lies at 700 meters above sea level, which is significant altitude for a vineyard because the
Yeah.
daytime gets nice and warm, but the nights chill down so significantly. And I was actually very fortunate because I worked in this vineyard when I worked for Peter Finlayson at Bushard, helping establish the vineyard in 2008. And I remember driving away from that site thinking, my goodness, if only I could ever make my own wine, it would have to be from a vineyard like this, which is at such a unique
Really.
spot. I mean, you drive past these apple orchards that are hanging heavy with apples. You drive past the brambles, they sort of scratch your car. You finally get to the top of this
Mm.
hillside, and here's this massive vineyard, which actually looks like table grapes from a distance. But then you go closer to these vines and you have to sort of find the little bunches, and often they have mille vendanges, which is like a
Yeah.
bit of a problem for the farmer because it results in very, very tiny grapes. But for me, of course, it's
Mm.
excellent because you have a higher skin to juice ratio. So you have much more density,
Mm.
much more concentration
Concentration.
in the
Yeah, it's
wine.
lovely. Mm. Mm.
But
So,
the vineyard
so
is really special. Yeah.
do you lease those vineyards, or do you just lay claim to them every year and say they're mine?
So it's an interesting story because Peter Finlayson has had a long-standing relationship with Johan, who is the owner of Kaimansgat Farm. He had
Mm.
his son in mind when he wanted to establish those Pinot vineyards. And in 2014, I went to see Peter Allen. He was doing a young gun stint with Wine Cellar. And he came up to me at the end of the function. He
Mm.
said, Jess, you've always wanted to make some Pinot. Do you want to have a ton of those grapes? Because he was obviously sort of the custodian of the vineyard, even though it was owned by Johan. So at
Mm.
that point, I said to him, "Wow, of course, how could I not make my own wine now?"
Who
And
doesn't want those grapes? Yeah.
I've been looking after the vineyard sort of hand in hand with the farmer now, helping where I could with the pruning practices and the summer canopy management and all that. And because he's
Mm.
traditionally an apple farmer, he's got his hands full with apples, and that's really the main income. And then the vineyards are sort of more secondary to him. So it's been a really
Mm.
great road to travel with him. He's a really lovely guy, wonderful family. His daughter's actually also studied winemaking, and that's really positive. He's yeah, so I still get grapes from there, but I have a certain rows that are my rows that I pick from every year, and that's just the two clones, 667 and 115. And so it
Yeah.
works out really well. And there's at the moment only 4 winemakers who are able to receive grapes from that site. It really is a very
Well,
aspirational
I
site.
always
And
laughed when
yeah,
I always laughed so much because I love Chardonnay as a white variety. It's my
yes.
favorite white varietal. And every
Mm,
Chardonnay that I came across when I first got back to South Africa, they said very proudly that the grapes came from the Kaimansgat area or Kaimansgat
yes.
vineyard. I said to Solly at the time, how big is this Kaimansgat space? Every single farm, I think it's every farmer's dream to have grapes from that sort of area. And of course,
Yeah.
it's Johann Rupert's farm, and he's done so much for the industry that we all have to sort of bow down and say thank you to. But it is one of my absolutely favorite sites for Burgundy grapes. There's no
Yeah,
matching
it's
it as far
amazing.
as I'm concerned. It's just
Absolutely.
beautiful. So you're very lucky. So you make nom from there, and then where does om come from?
So comes from a farm which is the very furthest farm in the Himal Ridge appellation, just above Creation. And it's an incredible spot because it's farmed by Shane Mullis, who married into the family as a viticulturist and has his greatest passion is to farm for soil health. And so he's really tackling this as quickly as he can, just converting things to a bit more of a holistic approach in the vineyard. And they are
Mm.
grape sellers, so they make a beautiful bubbles from their Pinot, and they make some other wines which are fantastic, and then the rest of the grapes they sell. And I've been fortunate to have this working relationship now since the beginning, since he actually started in 2018. And these vineyards are dryland vineyards, the Pinot vineyards that I get the grapes from, and they're also right next to conservation or next to a mountain reserve, basically. So each one of the vineyard sites I work with are located right next to a nature reserve, and that brings a huge ingress of
Oh, perfect.
biodiversity into the vineyards, which is fantastic. It also comes with its challenges, of course,
Yeah.
but in this case, it's just
Mm.
a benefit. And I find that the Himal Ridge Pinot is a very classic expression of Pinot. It's quite structured on the
Yes.
palate. It's got a whole array of aromatics, not only red berry fruit, but it's got this sort of feinbos character, what we refer to as a
I was going
wild
to
herb
say
character.
it does have that faint boss. I love it. It's beautiful.
And as it
It's
ages, it has a
it's
little bit of a
heathery, isn't it?
yes, heathery. That's a lovely description. Yeah. And then a little bit more of that
Mm.
mushroom, forest floor character develops with time and bottle, and a
It's
lot of spice.
everything that Pinot should be. We always say that we shouldn't try to emulate Burgundy, and we're not trying to emulate it. We're trying to coax or seduce the South African aromatics and mouthfeels and flavors out of our particular Pinot Noir. And I do think that proximity to our incredible fynbos kingdom that we are so privileged to have in South Africa, I think it really
Absolutely.
does just infuse. It just infuses those vineyards, and it gets into those roots, and it's beautiful. So that Pinot Noir, I think, has to be from that area. Well, of course, that's where Pinot Noir thrives, and that if we had appellation control, that would be our Burgundy. But it has
Yeah,
to go down on
absolutely.
record as being the best producers, a best area for Pinot Noir. It's gorgeous. You don't make lots of it though, do you? I mean, you don't have
No, so
millions
the
and millions of cases of wine.
I can only access about, between 3 and 5 tons of each vineyard each year. So that puts me anywhere between 3,000 and 5,000 bottles of Pinot per vineyard.
Mm,
My
mm.
Riesling production has increased quite a lot. I started with 2,500 bottles, and I've now managed to slowly but surely over the years increase it to about 12,000 bottles. So that's quite
Oh,
significant volumes
wonderful.
at this point.
Okay, brilliant.
And that
And
was
are you
obviously also as a
vinifying?
result. Sorry, it was also as a result of Jancis Robinson rating it as, possibly the best Riesling from South Africa. And since then, the demand has been really high. So, yeah, sorry.
Big. I'm sorry, we've got a bit of a time lag on here, Jason. You're going to have to do your magic on this podcast when Jess and I are finished. So, for anybody listening, if there's a time lag and we're interrupting each other, I do apologize. But Jess, are you vinifying everything in your barn at this stage of the game?
Yeah, so the red wines are all produced here now from last year, and that's working super well. We are completely off the grid where we are, however, so we only have access to mountain water, and we produce our own electricity with some solar panels. So that's a little tricky for the big production of Riesling, which has to happen down the road at a farm called Misty Mountains. They have the most amazing stainless
Okay.
steel equipment. And for me, it just works, because the Riesling is made within 2, 3 months,
Yes.
whereas the Pinot takes about a year to make. And so for me, it's perfect that I need to drive down the road for the Riesling production. And then the reds are just at home, and I can go and tend to them any time of the day or night.
I'm so proud of you. I'm not proud of Roland. You've done it all by yourself. We're not going to give him any of the credit. Although, to his credit, he's being an amazing dad at the moment, isn't he? He's looking after the children while you do your thing. And he
You
has to
know,
go and work sometimes every now and again as well. So we won't be too
no,
rude.
it's incredible, I must say. Having a strong partner helps a lot. And, not only is he also playing a great dad role, he's, my support in every possible way, and he's got an incredible
Yes.
business
No,
that's
he's been
thriving,
great.
and it's great to be able to work from here. I think not many people are able to make that work, to work from far away.
Well, if anybody was to describe my sort of heaven on earth, I think you and Roland might just have got it right, actually. I think you've created heaven on earth. You're in a
Well, we're
beautiful
trying
little
every day,
space. You're happy. You've got two beautiful children, haven't you?
Yes, I've got two
Two, or have you
boys,
got three now?
five,
Two
five
little
and
boys. Yeah.
yeah, two little boys, 5 and 7. And I've got my nephew as well, who's 13, and he's just an angel. He's used to live in Cape Town, and he has absolutely loved being on the farm. And he's in fact become such an avid plant identifier that he was identified the other day on iNaturalist to become part of some survey group that focuses
Oh,
on rare and
wonderful.
endangered species in the Fynbos Kingdom. So we know a lot more now
Well,
about all the flowers around us than we ever did.
Well,
Yeah,
that's a
it's
nice,
very
healthy
special.
thing to hear, rather than a 13-year-old who spends his life scrolling on TikTok. So that's
Yeah.
another step in the right direction to
Now you just
heaven,
give,
Jessica.
yeah, give people some nature, and that's then you find them thriving again.
I
So
know,
that's all we need.
I know. There's no substitute. Jess, you're amazing. I love your wine. I'm so looking forward to tasting it tomorrow. Thank you very, very much for spending time with us here on Carrie's Connoisseurs. It's a big privilege. And lots of love to all
Thank
of you.
you.
Keep doing just exactly what you're doing. You've got it
Thank you so
absolutely
much,
spot on.
Carrie. Much appreciated. Thanks, listeners, as well.
Thank you.
See you. Okay.
Bye.
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 Another production from Solid Gold Podcasts.